It's game week on 11 Personnel, presented by Monticello Bank. I'm Nick Rouch, joined by Adam Luckett, where we're here to get you set for the Cats and the Golden Eagles of Southern Miss Kentucky, opening the season against the squad from the Sun Belt Saturday at 7:45, maybe closer to 8, on the SEC Network at Kroger Field. Luckett, you can feel the energy. We're inching closer and closer. Today is officially the last day without college football for basically until forever. We've got so much football. It's going to be coming out of our ears, and I don't know about you, but I'm fired up.
Yeah, this is my favorite. At least not my if not my favorite, it's top 3 bare minimum weekends of the year. Thursday through Monday, you get the total college football buffet. You're not competing against NFL, so we can really just dive in all college football all weekend. You get a good slate on Thursday, good slate on Friday. Then you got the big Saturday slate, and then you like my favorite part of this whole weekend, Nick, is the Sunday and Monday. Like you get the double dip there at the end of the holiday weekend just to watch some football and overreact. Overreaction is the big thing this week. Like if you're not overreacting, like what the hell are you doing? Like this is the whole point. We've waited all this time to have some reactions to actual real football content, and we're getting that right now. And you saw that play out. I think some of the depth chart this week, not just here but everywhere, kind of across the college football landscape. It's not just a Kentucky thing. So yeah, I'm just chomping at the bit and really excited to just. I mean, Thursday, and it's fantasy football draft season time, Nick. So I always have like a fantasy football draft during this weekend. It's just like just the ultimate guys being dudes moment, right? Like you're sitting there, you're picking your fantasy team, you're drinking a couple pops, maybe having some queso or some wings, and you're watching football, and it's just a glorious time.
My only bone I have to pick with it is how the games are spread around in the opening start of the college football season. We needed more than 4 games in week 0. We got to get one in every window. Just give us, North Carolina, Minnesota, this Thursday night. I would have watched that in week 0 at 4 o'clock or 3:30 or whatever it was right after it. We need a few more Power 5 games for week 0. And then we need like 8 games on Sunday. Just one standalone a night is baloney. You and I grew up in the era when that was the Governor's Cup. And, when we're talking about the future of that game, I'm going to go back to memories of me going to watch parties on that Sunday where it's 100,000 degrees outside and you're sweating playing football. And then the game starts and you get to go inside and drink some Kool-Aid and cool off in the air-conditioned basement to watch the game. Like that's the one thing I think we're really missing from this weekend. I'm fine with just one on Monday night, but the Sunday could use a little bit more juice, even if it is just one of the 59 FBS versus FCS games that's happening this weekend. 59 FBS versus FCS games this weekend.
Nick, you just gotta let it go, man. Kentucky Louisville week 1 is not coming back.
Just
let it go.
I'm
let it go.
But just
let it go.
Give us something on Sunday besides one. Like this game, we'll talk about it tomorrow when we do our pigskin preview. That's probably my favorite game of the weekend is USC LSU standalone on Sunday night. But like I'm gonna be trying to scratch an itch. We're gonna just be overwhelmed with football on Saturday, and then Sunday's gonna come, and I'm like, where's all the football? You're just gonna take it away from me?
I don't mind it, and let me explain why. Because instead of us jumping in right away and having to do the head on a swivel thing, we get to actually sit down and consume some of these games. Like I like how the games are staggered on Saturday.
Yeah, that is true.
If you're a Kentucky fan, like it sets up awesome. Like you can watch West Virginia, Penn State, and you can watch Georgia, Clemson at noon.
Yep.
And then you got the Miami, Florida game at 3:30. And then that game's going to be over and you can walk into the stadium. Like it sets up perfectly from that aspect. Like I like that really it's only Minnesota, North Carolina on a Thursday. Like Nick, that's how I like to start my college football season. Like just give me like 2 teams right in the middle of the pack, that aren't going to compete for a conference title. Both teams are probably going to go 7-5 and let's just like enjoy it that it's back. So I kind of like how it sets up. And then I like the big games to be on the Sunday and Monday. Like you mentioned, with Sunday night's the best one, LSU, USC. We could probably do better than Boston College, Florida State.
Oh
But
yeah,
I would be
another
lying if that.
standalone Florida State DJU game. That's what I
I
need.
would. We would all be lying if we weren't all much more interested in that game now than we were at this time last week.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I would be more intrigued by an FBS versus FCS game. Like would not otherwise care about Colorado, North Dakota State if it wasn't being played Thursday night. But
And I like that. You got the Minnesota, North Carolina, so you've got like the built-in insurance. And I'm gonna tell you this: Minnesota plays bangers on Thursday night. They open the season every year on Thursday night because they have the state fair up there, and they've got to play before they bring the cows in Minneapolis. And they play bangers like they had Nebraska. I believe they played Nebraska one year.
Turnover game. And
that was last year.
Can't complete a pass. And then we had the game where Josh Paschal's old teammate ran for like 230.
They played Ohio State. They had Ohio State on the ropes for like 3 quarters.
With a big old running back.
That was in 2021. Mo Ibrahim. Yeah. They play bangers on Thursday night. So PJ Fleck, they will deliver the goods one way or the other.
Guyuma. Oh man. That's me just nitpicking. I'm being a little nitpicky here. But otherwise, I'm fired up. I'm excited for this. We're figuratively fired up. We're in the hot box. It's 100 degrees outside. My office at home has no air conditioning. The office at KS office has no air conditioning. So we're going through it, and it's because we love you. We're here for the people, just like Monticello Bank. That's where people matter, and it's mattered there for 128 years, Mr. Luckett.
That's right.
Go
to Monticello Bank, they will have AC for you.
They will
guarantee that you can cool off while you take out a loan.
You can visit any of their 21 branches in 14 different markets across the Commonwealth. You can also bank on your phone with the Go NBC mobile app, or whether you're at home, on the road, wherever it may be, Monticello Bank has you covered. Take them with you when the Cats go on the road this fall, their 4 road games. You can find them on the web at nbcbank.com. Monticello Bank, where people matter. Member FDIC, equal housing lender, proud presenting sponsors of 11 Personnel. We really do appreciate them. And seriously, if y'all want to do us a favor, you got something big coming up, or even if you just want to open a savings account, CD, whatever it may be, investigate Monticello Bank, and we would greatly, greatly appreciate it. We appreciate their support throughout this entire Kentucky football season, which is finally kicking off, Luckett. And I still haven't had that. This is a transition week. Stoops has mentioned it as getting into a rhythm, and I haven't gotten into a rhythm. And I also haven't gotten completely worn out from preseason, like going and talking to Bush and some of the players, like Gerald Mincy. He's a lot of fun. We can mention that. I haven't got sick of that. I have got sick and tired of questions about Brock Vandegrift, about the tablets, about the Stoops. I think he's going to break a tablet the next time he gets asked about a damn tablet. There's a lot of this where talking seasons had a little bit more teeth to it this year because there is more to talk about, Luckett, but you reach a point where it's like, all right, let's play some damn football.
Yeah, let's like react to stuff that happens in game and kind of see where everything is. Again, there was helmet comm questions today, but this one was actually, I think it was important for people to learn this. The green dot on defense, which I don't know if they're calling it a green dot, but I'm going to be calling it a green dot all year.
There's like the 2-minute timeout. It's not the 2-minute warning. It's a 2-minute timeout. Warning.
So the green dot, only one player can wear it. So let's say De'Aaron Jackson wears the green dot.
Which I don't think it does.
I don't think it's going to be a plan that if there's 10 possessions in a ball game, he would play every 10 possessions. There's probably going to be a possession or possession and a half. They're going to want to put David Rayner in there for him, and then maybe Rayner does the same for Pop Dumas Johnson. So maybe Rayner ends up playing like 3 full possessions in a game. But there's going to be times where they don't have the green dot on the field on defense if guys come out or whatever. So coaching wise, that's like strategic. How do you play? Who do you give it to, and how do you plan that? And Brad White talked about that today. It was basically like, we'll be fine because we've done it for so long. And I think it's more evidence that this is more for offenses.
Yeah,
This is really an offensive extension or add-on. It's really for the offenses.
Well, and like, here's the thing, Luckett. What's the length of an offensive call versus the length of a defensive call? I mean, even in the most simplistic forms, like over green can be just a call for defense. I mean, that's a base, but like the verbiage is significantly shorter. You know, under red saw, like it can be that simple as like a blitz call or whatever, right? Whereas offense calling out formations and motions, like there's a lot of tags and everything like that that can compound it. So I'm with you. Like I don't think it is as big of a deal for the defense. What I think is a big deal for the defense, like it is just the sideline and the iPad stuff. But you know, maybe I might like. I think that helps them out more. But at the same time, Bush Hamden kind of led on to it yesterday, where he talked about the script and how they formulate it and all this. And early on in the year, a lot of what they're doing is just, all right, how's the defense going to react to this? How's the defense going to react to that? Because that's how we're going to create our counters later on. And the iPad technology certainly helps that out.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to take an adjustment period, I think, for most coaching staffs. I think there's probably going to be value to gain for the teams that can figure out how to streamline and how to use that the most efficiently early. I think after a year or so, they'll probably all have it figured out. But in first year, maybe year and a half, there's probably going to be advantages to be gained. So who kind of gains those advantages? And like for like the tempo teams, does this give them advantage? No advantage? Does it speed them up? Do they decide to slow down? Like how does that all play out? I think that's something we don't know. We're going to have to figure this out. And like we talked about on the football podcast on Monday with Drew and Max Duffy here at KS Bar. So by the way, we're going to be there every Monday at 1:30 p.m. Yeah. So if you're in town in Lexington, you want to come grab lunch, come say hey, we'll be there.
Yeah, come hang.
So just come see us.
It's cooler in the bar than the office.
Yeah, I promise it's livable. It's beer drinking temperatures in there, no doubt about it. 100%. You can come get Kentucky Blue Light or whatever your beer is a choice. They got it all here at KS Bar. But like the 2-minute warning, like who messes that up or who doesn't use that the right way, right? Like who loses games because of that or who wins games because of that usage? That's going to be fascinating to figure out. I think coaches that had an NFL background, whether it be play caller or head coach, I think they're going to have a little bit of an advantage here because they are used to being in a world where you had to calculate that into your prep and your plan and all of that.
I'm looking forward to it. Like I said, I'm getting kind of tired of talking about it, but there was some fun quotes this week. We had Mincy, because we'll get to some of the uncertainties that we have with the running game, some questions we have about Kentucky and what may be revealed when the Cats host Southern Miss. We'll tell you all about what the Golden Eagles are bringing to Kroger Field. But the offensive line is pretty confident. I don't know how much of it's the offensive line at all, or it's just Gerald Mincy having fun with the media. Because in his interview with us the other day, he dropped some silly shenanigans. He talked about how they were going to run for DSK was going to run for 300-400 yards. They could put Bush back there and he could run for 200. But I do think some of it was when he got serious, he was just like, this has gone by really fast. I felt like I was just playing the last game with my former team. So I'm trying to enjoy this. And even though he was with another team, it feels like they're coming together. It feels like they're confident. I was just highly entertained by Mincy. And I love hearing like, all right, here's a guy who is a little loose, who's confident in what they're bringing to the table. Okay, let's go see it. Let's go see it on Saturdays. I enjoyed that. I also enjoyed this clip today from Brad White that I didn't necessarily anticipate hearing.
Funny to me. That's play number one, right? And I mean, I think you go to our 2 top 10 draft picks this year. I don't know how many combined starts they had on the basketball team, right? But obviously they had plenty of talent. And they got plenty of play.
What was your read on that, Mr. Luckett? You were there as it was happening.
Yeah, I think he was trying to tell us what we know, that like they do the depth charts just because they have to. Like they don't necessarily mean anything. Yeah. like, I mean, Stoops cut me off when I asked about it on Monday. Was pretty much like, they're all starters, or
Yeah.
So maybe they have 5 starters, or maybe they have good depth. Maybe they don't have good depth. That's why it's horse. So you kind of read between the lines. I do think it's, we're still doing the football basketball thing. Even if it's unintentional, like there's going to be takes on that. So that was interesting.
And I think,
but it's also a sign that the football fan base or the football coaching staff is hearing the fan frustrations. They've heard the complaints about lack of man coverage. They've heard the complaints about lack of tempo, and they heard the complaints about Reed Shepherd and Rob Dillingham not starting in a basketball game. So they're on the same page. They're on the same wavelength. We're on the same channel.
They're hearing it, but I also kind of hear Brad not taking a shot at Cal, but also saying like starters don't matter. And I do think they matter significantly less in football, because how many times do guys get subbed in on defense and we have no idea? I mean, that happens quite often before you kind of catch up. I think you'd probably notice it most at that cornerback position where they've got oars all over the place. But, when they're subbing in, when Keyshawn Silver gets subbed out, you're probably not going to notice it until they're still on the field after like 4 or 5 plays, right? Like if Deion's not out there, you'll notice that. But a lot of times you don't realize that the second D-line group is in for this drive, and it kind of takes you a second to get the wheels turning.
Yeah, I think a lot of fans in attendance or watching games probably don't realize how many D linemen play in a game. Right.
Yeah, and a lot of guys will just play like a dozen snaps, like Khalil Saunders and not Ox. Who's another one that was probably about 15 snaps? Like Dinkins. Dinkins was probably a dozen snaps last year.
You probably don't realize that like Gerard Smith, Brian Robinson, they probably won't play a ton early,
but they'll sneak in.
But in November, they're going to be playing like legitimate snaps in big games. Because as the season wears down, that's when the depth hits, and you got to play other players, and you got to keep guys fresh. So it is important from that aspect, and you want to keep guys bought in. And if your way of messaging and doing that is using a depth chart and not announcing starters or whatnot, and then on some of these positions, Nick, like that cornerback 2 spot, I don't think is decided at all.
No.
Yeah.
And that's par for the course over there too. Like
the game within the game. Yeah.
They did
game
that
within
right
the
away.
game, snap count distribution. Like one of the first things I'm going to look up after the game is get on PFF and find the snap counts. Like how did that work out there at the other cornerback spot? So that for sure. And then kind of like the unknown, like how do they handle the nickel snaps? Right? How do they handle the nickel snaps? Who gets them? Is it a rotating cast of characters? Is Alex Safari still getting a lot of play at Sam and base? Because this is a matchup with Southern Miss. They're going to be playing a good amount of base. Because Southern Miss is kind of in the same mold as Kentucky's offense. I would say it's got pro style kind of roots, but it's modernized for the college game to take advantage of the hash marks and use tempo, variants of tempo, and use preset motions, and use the QB in the run game. But they're going to see a decent dose, I think, of 12 personnel on Saturday. So they're going to be in base a lot. They're going to see a tight end's going to be in that game a ton. I don't know if they'll see any in 10 for most of the game. So like they're going to be in base a ton. So what does that mean? Does that mean Fearbury at Sam? Does that mean Afari at Sam? How do you kind of play that out? And that's something we're going to find out.
As you alluded to earlier, we're not going to find out who Southern Miss's quarterback is before the game. Although I have my suspicions, Mr. Luckett, because they have a guy who returned and played a couple games last year in backup duty as a true freshman. But they brought in Tate Rodemaker from Florida State, and I don't think you're bringing in that guy unless he's going to play. I think Kentucky is preparing for the same as well.
Yeah, and then I think their backup is more of kind of can bring maybe a wildcat option. So that's something to watch out for. I think offensively, the thing to know about Southern Miss is 2 of their top receivers are going to be SEC transfers. Dennis Jackson played at Ole Miss in Missouri, played sparingly. And then Larry Simmons spent a couple years at Missouri at Ole Miss, Mississippi native, hasn't played. And then Ty Keys is a guy that they think can be kind of an all-conference, all-Sun-Belt type player. Like, he's a good receiver.
Yeah, and he's a good returner as well, too.
Yeah,
had a punt return touchdown last year.
There's some like Barry and Brown type play traits with him. I think if you're going to describe him as a player, what he can bring, and he's going to be a focal point of their offense. They've got a big running back who played at Quez Clark, I believe his name is, or Drez Clark, something. Clark's his last name. He played at Memphis, been at Southern Miss, sitting behind Frank Gore Jr., but he's a good player. Like, you're going to see him. Offensive line is retooling a little bit, but they're going to have like 5 first-year transfers starting on offense, 5 or 6 starting on offense. So there's going to be a lot of new there, plus a new coordinator. To me, Nick, it could be a thing where maybe Southern Miss can hit them with a jab early, maybe catch Kentucky off guard. But come second or third possession, I think you'll see Kentucky settle in and kind of tighten the screws there. And it's going to be hard for, I think, Southern Miss to move the football. But I think early, I wouldn't be surprised if Southern Miss comes out and has some success because of the new play caller and all of that.
Did you so it was kind of funny because Stoops, like when he was asked about them, the only player he mentioned was the player who graduated last year, which was Frank Gore Jr. And I love the stat that was going around because, I mean, Frank Gore just retired. And he is basically an Iron Man at running back. Stoops was on the staff when he was at Miami. The stat that was going around this week was that LeBron James averaged 27.2 points per game when Frank Gore Sr. entered the NFL in 2005. LeBron James averaged 25.7 points per game when Frank Gore Jr. entered the NFL in 2024. That's wild. LeBron's an easy target for fodder, but that guy is just that's going to be a very hard day for my mortality when he decides to retire, because my entire childhood has basically been watching him play basketball. When he quits playing basketball, I will officially not have that. Like, I can't like pretend to be the same person I was in my next door neighbor's basement watching St. Vincent St. Mary's play back in 2002 with Jay Bills and Dick Vitale on the call.
That's what I was going to ask you. Did you watch those games? Because I remember like vividly sitting down to watch those games.
And you can't really describe how big of a deal they were, because now like mixtapes and all that are a big deal, and high school games are played all the time on the 4-letter network. But like that was a first, and it was appointment television. Like
it was like Caitlin Clark, I think, with the WNBA. It kind of had that feel like you had like this is the next big thing. You gotta get there and watch it. Like it had the Caitlin Clark, to me, kind of the feel to it. Like she's on TV. Like you need to try to go find a way to watch it. And that's how those LeBron games, St. Vincent St. Mary games. I believe they played Oak Hill, and they played the team out in California. Maybe Mater Dei is, I think, one of the teams.
Mater Dei was one they played, and then I think they put in a couple games against in-state foes there, like St. Ed's or something like that. But that was the time too when, you know, I'm playing like NBA Street and all the NBA games and stuff, and I don't make this but that's going to be one of those where I'm like, oh gosh, like when LeBron's not playing basketball, so you know what? Thanks, LeBron. Thanks for being Mr. Reliable. Always being there.
Well, you got Bronny. You have Bronny. You'll be okay.
He's just as good. He's just as impressive. But Frank Gore Jr., he ain't walking through that door. Kentucky actually recruited him a little bit out of high school, and I believe he transferred from somewhere, right? Like, didn't he go to some ACC school before moving to Southern Miss, if I'm not mistaken?
I don't think so. I think he was just at Southern Miss.
He was just straight Southern Miss?
Yeah.
Huh, interesting. But Southern Miss, it's a program that I feel for. I empathize for, because to go back to our middle school days and our childhood, they used to be one of the biggest games of the year for the team down the road, right? Like they were both founding members
peers
of Conference USA. Yeah, they were peers. Like that was the biggest rivalry. It was Louisville when they played, like they and it alternated some, but like usually they had 2 or 3 good games in that league, and it was like it switched up between Southern Miss, Cincinnati, Memphis, and TCU. And Southern Miss was the most steady of them all. I saw a stat too. They played an SEC team every year annually for 54 years or something like that. Southern Miss has a very proud football tradition, and they just got completely left behind in conference realignment. And now they're in the Sun Belt, which feels like where they should have been a while ago. And I think that is outside of, I guess, the Mountain West maybe, or the American. Like I think it's the best developmental and like most entertaining of the G5s. No offense to Maction. Maction gets a little silly, but like the Sun Belt produces some really good football teams. They got some really good players that end up going somewhere. Our guy John Summerall's guy Vidal, he's going to probably play a ton for Jim Harbaugh this year out with the Chargers. So I think that's a good spot for them. But I do like sympathize with this fan base that, I mean, Mississippi as a state, it's not like Kentucky. Like you might want to make the comparisons that like, oh, well, they don't have anything else. But like the divide between Southern Miss, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State, like Ole Miss is kind of elite, right? It's the elitists. They were the segregated school for the longest time. Mississippi State is much more rural, agricultural. But then Southern Miss, like the Gulf is almost like its own region, like it, and those are a proud people with a proud football program that's kind of gotten kicked around in recent years, got left behind in conference realignment, and they've only won 6 games in their first 2 years of Sun Belt play, and they lost most of their coordinators. So the wheels are spinning a little bit right now, but I do think they're in the right spot. It's just, I mean, they had kind of a disastrous turnover there with coach after coach after coach. Like the dude from Austin P left, and then he got fired like 3 games in. Like they had some weird stuff going
Scotty
on
Walden.
down there.
Yeah, I think was that Southern Miss he was at?
I thought Jay Hobson had something happen. He had to leave and get fired. And then they wanted to keep the interim. They said no, and they brought in a new guy, and then something weird happened.
Yes,
there.
You're right. It was Scotty Walden. It was the COVID year. He stayed for 4 games and then left, and then that Tim Billings took over. It was a whole. And Hobson left for I can't remember why he left, but it was something unique.
Yeah, like it was just a mess for like 2 or 3 years that really set them back. And I think they're in the right league, but they were picked to finish 6th this year in the Fun Belt West. They have 51 newcomers, which is, top 25 in FBS. And I saw another number 2. Only 4 players in their final year of eligibility started their career at Southern Miss.
He resigned after the first game of the COVID season.
They got shellacked. He was like fighting for his job, and they get their teeth kicked in. He's like, all right, you guys were right. I quit.
South Alabama beat them 32-21. So I don't know. We can revisit that. But yeah, they've been a mess a few times here recently. The natural comp, I think, this week, Nick, for people to talk about is, last time Southern Miss came here, they beat Kentucky. Southern Miss was a 6-point dog in that game. Southern Miss had an NFL quarterback.
Yeah.
Southern Miss had Kentucky's old offensive coordinator.
And NFL running back.
They had an NFL receiver.
Yeah. Nick Mullins, Ito Smith, and was it Marquez?
Quez Watkins.
Quez Watkins, yeah. Like, they had some ball players on that team, and I forget that coach, the head coach's name. I just remember Shannon Dawson. But he had been around.
It was his first game. It was
okay.
Well, Munkin was there. And Munkin left to become an offensive coordinator in the NFL. And the year before, they scored a boatload of points, and Nick Mullins threw for like 4,000, 5,000 yards. And then he left, and Hobson came in. But he inherited like a really, really good team. That team ended up disappointing because they didn't win anything of significance. I think they ended up going like 8-6 or something like that. But they had a really good team that year. And Kentucky was in a different spot as a program. I think you just look at the 2 betting spreads in these games, and it tells you it all, Nick. One was a touchdown spread. The other was going to be a 4 touchdown spread. So that kind of tells you where they are from that aspect. Southern Miss, I think, is going through some hard times, and it's kind of now or never for head coach Will Hall. This was a guy who was a Division II head coach, called plays his whole career. I think he went to the Final Four in the Division II playoffs a couple times. Then he went and was an offensive coordinator for Willie Fritz at Tulane, got the Southern Miss job as a Mississippi native. Like, he is pulling out all the stops this year. Went out and hired 2 new coordinators, gave up play calling for the first time in his career, loaded up on transfers. Or not really necessarily loaded up, but went and got some power conference transfers. So they're all in a lot of ways in this year. Now we'll see if it works with his 2 new hires. But I want people to know this. There are a lot of SEC players on this team. Like, they've got like 20, 25 guys who were on an SEC roster at one point. Like, an SEC roster signed them out of high school or junior college. So, like, and specifically their defensive line is I think, a good unit. Like, Kentucky's going to play a lot better defensive lines this year, but they'll play much worse than what they'll see against Southern Miss on Saturday. Like, Southern Miss has got a good defensive line. And so that is going to be a challenge, I think, for Kentucky's offensive line. We talked about earlier the confidence Kentucky's offensive line has. Again, game within the game for me is watching that matchup. Like, if Kentucky doesn't dominate them, that's not necessarily a red flag for me at the line of scrimmage, because I think Southern Miss has got a good defensive line. But if, say, they do dominate them, that's a really good sign, I think. And so that's going to be something I'm going to be watching. Now, you don't want to see them get dominated, but I want to point it out that Southern Miss has a good defensive line. Now, back seven's a big question mark. A lot of unproven parts of that back seven. Back seven, it's not looking great, but the front, it's got some talent on it.
They didn't. It's a good sign when you don't have to bring in a bunch of portal players for that position group. There's been a lot of continuity there, and for me. Like, I'm going to do the easy comps for 2 games. One of them is the Chattanooga game when Chattanooga brought it up front and Kentucky wasn't ready. But to go back to that 2016 game, Luckett, that's enough to where, like, all you have to do is just show your players that scoreboard, and they'll be well aware of what could happen.
It was also a decade ago, too. I think we have to remember.
Oh, yeah. And it feels like just yesterday, but that was the start of Good Stoops. I mean, he was on the hot seat, and we thought that game was going to get him fired. Like, that was very much a real possibility. And it's very funny now that, 9 seasons later, come back and he's the all-time winningest coach at Kentucky. But like,
Benny Snell started getting the football after that game. That is really when the ball control version of Stoops really started. Because you can go look at that box score. Like, the reason Kentucky lost that game is because they just didn't possess the football. The defense was gas in the entire second half, and the offense couldn't grind out first downs.
Kentucky
couldn't run the football.
Scored from 73, 53, and 43 yards in that game. Something like it was a bunch of big plays.
They scored 28 points in a section of the game, 28 points in 19 plays.
That's crazy.
So, which is great. Like, that's great, but that's hard to maintain. And then in the game kind of changed because they gave up the big, long touchdown pass before the half to make it a 3-possession game, which was a huge point in that game. And then they failed to play situational football after that. Once Southern Miss cut it to 2 scores, they couldn't possess the football. Yeah. They had no game control.
But, like, to get back to my original point, though, there is I don't think you're going to catch this team coming out sleeping is my whole thing. Like, first and foremost, first game of the year, you've got a little bit extra juice. But I think they're well aware that even though they are 27.5-point favorites, that you can't just show up and expect them to roll over.
Sure.
They're going to be on high alert. They're going to be ready to physically dominate an opponent. So I'm pretty bullish on Kentucky's chances. We can talk a little bit more about specific matchups. But first, I want to talk to you about our friends at Game Time. If you don't have tickets yet for Saturday's game at Kroger Field, go ahead. Download the Game Time app, hop on there, and see what they got to offer. Because Game Time, they have the best prices for tickets. It's fast. It's easy. You can toggle the switch to get it's all-inclusive pricing, especially with the new Game Time picks feature, that just it weeds out all of the guard. You don't have to go through all of the bad seats. No, they're giving you the best prices, the best spots. You can see the view from your seat. It's incredible. And then you don't have to worry about a bunch of fees and all this sort of stuff getting tagged on top of it. You just know exactly what you have to pay. The tickets get delivered directly to your phone. And here's another good part too, Mr. Luckett. If you use promo code KSR, you're going to get $20 off your first purchase. Bada boom, bada bam. So those what is that a $28 I'm seeing up there, Mr. Peak, in the upper deck? That's a easy little get-in price there up top. So go ahead. Oh, well, tickets galore. Even though season tickets are sold out, you can still get in the door to make sure you're there for the season opener against Southern Miss by going to Game Time. So don't waste any time. Visit gametime.co or download the Game Time app and use redeem code KSR for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Use Game Time throughout this entire college football season, whether you're going to watch the Cats or some other team, one of the other big games this weekend. There's plenty to choose from. We're excited to be partnering with Game Time this season. And like I'm excited to see you mentioned the offensive line and just how will they match up against Southern Miss defensive line. What's this running game going to be like? Because all we've heard about is we got to run the ball. We got to be able to run the ball when we need to run the ball, and everybody knows that we're going to run the ball. They don't got Chip. They got Demi Sumar-Carmbe, who was on the team last year, but you hardly knew it, and then a couple of freshmen. What's it going to look like?
Yeah. I'm excited to see Jason Patterson, Nick, because I think he's kind of gotten lost in the wash. And I went back to kind of my spring game notes. I thought he looked the best of any of the backs playing in that game. Like, he just moved different than the rest of Kentucky's tailbacks. And this was a guy who was a really accomplished high school player in Florida. And you can say what you want about Scott Satterfield, but his running back track record for hits at the running back position is pretty good. He's crapped out a bunch of 1,000-yard rushers. So I'm still pretty high on him, so I'm excited to see him. But, yeah, what does the run game look like? And are they able to just line up and run it against a good Southern Miss defensive front, or do they have to get more creative in the run game? Do they come out and try to take advantage? Like, do they come out and try to take advantage of a Southern Miss pass defense that has some glaring holes? Like Southern Miss, MJ Daniels was a starter for them. Kind of play corner and safety. Ole Miss transfer. He's probably one of their better defensive players, and he was shot and killed in June. And so this is a program and team that's been through a lot, and they're like I'm assuming that's probably going to be part of the broadcast, so you're going to see that. So they suffered a tragic loss in June, a key player, and then like what does their defense look like in the back end and the secondary? Two brand new starting linebackers against the offense for Kentucky is going to have a lot of eye candy and get you out of position. So what can Hamden do to kind of scheme up that run game? Very interested to see. And then like how is Brock Vandergriff used, and is there do we get the Wimset package at all on Saturday? And to me, I think with this run game, like I don't think it necessarily kills you as long as you get Traynham back eventually. But what it does do is kind of force Bush Hamden to pull the right levers and to mix and match correctly and to adjust and to have a diversified attack and to be able to counter when the defense maybe has something stopped.
Much smaller margin of error for him as a play caller.
Where it's not like, okay, we're just getting into 12 and we're going to run downhill.
Well, inside zone.
some teams can do.
Yeah.
It's what Kentucky could do in the past. It wasn't super complicated when they were rolling offensively in the run game. And so, like, let's see what kind of play calling chops and in-game chops Hamden has early. I think we're going to see that. I don't know if we'll see that week 1, but we're eventually going to see it week 2 because South Carolina's got a good defensive front. But from that aspect, I kind of like that they're playing this Southern Miss defensive front because they're going to see a good one next week and they're going to see a really good one the week after that. So, like, it's a good early test to see, I think, where that offensive line sits at this point.
And on the flip side, though, you mentioned the back half being pretty inexperienced. What
You just come
I
out and
know,
throw it early, just loosen them up.
well, and the other part of this too, Luckett, is like how many times have we fallen for the receiver stuff in the preseason, and then we fell for the
Yeah.
Leary stuff last time? And so there's definitely Kentucky fans, we have hardened hearts about getting overhyped for a passing offense under Mark Stoops. But they might just kick ass, right? Brock Vandagriff's a former 5-star blue chip top 50 quarterback, son of a coach who's a great athlete and has a bunch of future NFL players to throw to. I mean, normally there's like
There's definitely an element of prove it.
there's an element of prove it, but it also feels like they kind of got their stuff together and that they might just like kick all kinds of ass on Saturday and make it look easy. I mean, that's just throwing it underneath and then hitting like a couple of big shots, yards after catch. Like, because I mean, Brock, to throw for 300 yards, how many shots does he really have to hit down the field? 3? Like he doesn't have to do a lot if he operates within the offense and he just is efficient in the pass game, because that's the one part about Demi Sumo-Karmbe that we saw in the spring game that was boring, but that boring might help, right? Like checking down, throwing it to the flats. When Brock played against Kentucky last year, he was doing that sort of stuff. That sort of boring stuff will get yards. So like I think where we have always expected, like the way that my brain was morphed is that Kentucky had to be efficient in the run game and explosive in the pass game, and that was how you found a balance. I think they can just be kind of a little bit of both in each avenue, right? Like you can just be efficient in the passing game and not have to wholly rely on Devin Leary to just launch the ball down the field 8 times to Berrien Brown. I think that's what I'm getting at. I think those explosives might just come if Brock is just hitting the guys at the right time and not panicking back there in the pocket.
No one's really talking about this, and a lot of it's because we didn't see scrimmages. We're having to hear from people who saw it and then take it from there. But like Brock Vandagriff played good in the spring game. Like he impressed in the spring game, and he played. By all reports, he played well in both of these scrimmages and kept getting better throughout fall camp. At Georgia, when you watched him, like I think what excited you, he played on time within the structure of the offense. Like I point out the drive he had where they scored against Kentucky. Like no one's open, hit the check down in stride, like playing on time in the structure of an offense. And I think that's what Mark Stoops was alluding to on his coach's show. Like he's not going to sit here and hold the football and try to make explosive plays.
Mm-hmm.
If they're playing the shift, he's going to hit down third baseline. Like he's going to play within the structure of the offense, and I think that's exciting for what Kentucky has at receiver. Like just give the playmakers the ball and let's play ahead of the chains. And then getting back to the game one, that's why I think I wouldn't be surprised if you kind of see them and maybe air it out a little bit early because of what they have in the passing game, because of the situation in the run game, to maybe try to show, hey, like we can throw the football too. I know we've sit here and told everybody we want to run it, but we can throw it too. And this is going to be a part of our offense. But really excited to see the offense because we have a lot of things we think, but not a lot of things we know. Where I think we have more things we know on defense. Yeah,
which that was what I was going to ask you. You mentioned the cornerback snap counts. Is there what is it that will like that? I don't want to say is a given, but if Kentucky does this, you might say, oh, they might be better than I expected. Is there anything they can do defensively that will make you potentially think that the ceiling can be elevated for this defense this fall?
One thing they cannot do that would impress, like do not let Southern Miss go 17-23, right? Like that was the big thing last year. Like just teams were able to like gobble up completions in yardage. Like force some completions. Can you get them hovering around 50% completion rate? Like if they do that, I think that would be a good sign. I've talked all offseason, I felt like since that Gator Bowl ended, Nick, about Tyrese Fearbry and what I think he can provide this defense as a true edge winner pass rusher. That defenses might have to pick their poison against at some point if Deion Walker's wrecking shop can be a guy who can take advantage of the volume or gravity that Deion would have in the middle. So he's a guy, like if he pops again, 2 games in a row, Clemson and Southern Miss, and it's just this hellion coming off the edge that these offensive lines are struggling to contain, that would be a really good thing. So that's what I would look for on defense. Do Jansen Dunn and J.Q. Hardaway look better? Because there was large times in games where they struggled. And they were giving up completions, and guys were pretty open, and they weren't playing with a lot of confidence. I think Dunn started to gain that against Louisville and Clemson, but do we see them play with more confidence this year?
I'm going to take out the first drive because after watching the games last weekend, like the first scripted series of the season is pretty well scripted. There's a lot of juice out there. Guys are probably playing a little out of position because the intensity is so high. They get their blinders on and things slip up. So I'm going to excuse the first drive, whatever happens, because I think that could be one of those longer drives. But that I'm going to be just looking at what no more than 8 play drives. Like I don't want to see get off the field on third down. Yes, you're going to get dealt. Like there might be a time where Brock throws a pick or something like that, and you got a short field and you give up a touchdown. That sort of stuff happens. But it's the 10, 12, 17 play drives that we had to sit there and watch last year where the defense is just getting drained. Like you cannot let a team like Southern Miss do that to you.
Louisville's a perfect example of that game. Like it was just like, can you get off the field?
They're Tennessee. Like that was the same way. Like Joe Milton, it would just be 3rd and 5, and he'd find a way to get 6 yards or something like that. That one guy who didn't really play for them at all last year and is going to probably be an RB1 for him this year. I can't think of his name right now.
Dylan Sampson.
Yeah, he completely killed us. So that for me, it's all like, are you just taking care of business? I don't need a goose egg, a shutout, which we've only had one time in the Mark Stoops era. But I want to see them get off the field quickly. Kentucky has not allowed more than 300 yards of offense in 3 straight season openers. We can give official predictions before. I know a lot of people want to hear them now. But that 27.5 seems like a lot. It doesn't seem like a lot to me. Like it doesn't.
To me, one thing I want to know: Kentucky 12-3-1 ATS last 16 non-conference games.
16 wins in non-conference regular season games in a row. Only 2 bowl losses in that span.
They have covered 4 straight non-conference openers. The last one they didn't cover was the Central Michigan one where Terry Wilson had like 4 turnovers in the first half, right? There was a turnover party there, and then they kind of took over in the second half. Ended up winning by like 2 touchdowns. So that was the only one they didn't cover. Like they have, there is like, I think people just like have it trained in their brain that they start slow and that these first games are like 23-17, but it really hasn't been that in really since 2018. Like Kentucky's really handled their business in this first game. And so that's to take into account. Now this is a big total or a big spread. I mean, you're talking 4 touchdowns. How many points do you think Kentucky's going to score on offense? That to me is the question. Because they got the back door last year, Nick, but they also had a defensive score in that football game. Jalen Geiger had the Alex Safari had the strip, and Jalen Geiger had the scoop and score.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to take that into account, like, okay. And then the year before that, they had the Berrien Brown kickoff return touchdown. So what if you don't get one of those non-offensive touchdowns?
Yeah, but Berrien Brown has returned a kickoff in every single season opener he's ever played in college football, which is another wild stat. Can he go 3 for 3?
Did he return one last year against Ball State?
Yeah. Yeah, you got the stats wrong, by the way, on Football Podcast. He's got 4 return touchdowns in his career.
Well, CFB reference is wrong.
That's what it said 4. I think you misread it.
No, I think it said 4, maybe.
He had 3 last year because he had one against Ball State. He had one against Louisville.
I don't remember having one against Ball State.
Yeah. He had one against Ball State. Back-to-back season openers, he's gotten one. So we're going for a three-peat for Barry and Brown.
So they had 2 non-defensive scores against Ball State.
Yes. The offense was not crisp, but it was very crisp, and I kind of liken it to the Levis versus ULM opener where Terry Bowden was playing some similar games with the depth chart and the quarterbacks and all that sort of stuff, but they were coming in as one of the worst programs in FBS. I know you're probably like it's hard to power rankings are gospel when there's no stats baked into it, but like they're in the 128s out of 134s in pretty much anyone you want to look up. They're at the bottom of the barrel. If Southern Miss, like they'd have to score more than 10 points. I don't think they're going to get there. I think Kentucky can score 40 pretty easily because I don't know how many long sustained drives they're going to be able to get. Like I think to score, they have to be more explosive early on. They're not just going to be handing it to Benny Snell, like they're going to have to be a little bit explosive to keep the chains alive. So I think they're going to score 40 plus and barring a pick six into the Southern Miss hands, I can't imagine them scoring more than 10 points against this Kentucky defense. So I do like Kentucky to cover that big number.
I'm with you on the 10, Southern Miss wise. That seems about right, 10 to 13. I just don't know if you're at 38 to 42. If you're asked, that's a lot of points. So I don't know if I would lay it here because of that. Because I just don't. Even if they get a lead early, we know how Mark Stoops likes to ride, man. They're going to run the football. And especially with their run game, they're probably going to use that as run game practice, right? If they got a 3-touchdown lead.
It's a good point.
So that's where I sit, at least.
All right. More important question. How many times are we going to see Bush Hamden at the coffee machine Saturday night? It's a late one, 7:45.
Do they have their own coffee machine in the room?
No, because I would see, like Drake Jackson was up in the booth, and I'd see, and Courtney Love would be up there, and they'd be sneaking off to get drinks too.
Well, we probably won't see Bush then. We'll probably see Drake or
grabbing a coffee
whoever,
for the coach.
Yeah, whoever else is up there in the booth with them.
I'm fired up. It is going to be a bit of a late one, but like we said, it sets up perfectly for tailgating. We hope you tailgate safely. Hopefully it cools down by then. Let's get an early weather forecast, shall we?
It's looking like pop-up shower too, maybe. But it has like 81, 82.
Cool you off? Oh, that's so much better than 97, 97, 97. And then on Saturday, high of 84. And
it's going to feel like 68.
Oh, 76 at 8 p.m. with a 50% chance of a pop-up shower. Sign me up for that.
Yeah, but you know how the rain goes. That rain forecast can move around. It could be raining at 3 a.m. on our drive back, or it could be raining at 3 p.m.
You know what, though? Are we going to start weather wars with Chris Bailey? Because he'll start calling his shot, and I don't want to have to get in a fight with the Lexington meteorologist community.
Listen, this, living in Louisville, like, we have to deal with Mark Weinberg, right? Like, that guy is Mr. Weather. Just incredible. Incredible stuff. Mark with a C. Mark with a C. Do not go out in this. This is really bad. You should stay home and
please,
Mark, it's raining.
For your safety.
Mark, it is raining outside.
I don't want to do this. It is my job. We are obligated to tell you for your safety. All right, do you have a favorite weatherman?
Oh, just a quick story. Back when Fox used to have the U.S. Open, right?
Yeah. Joe Buck and Holly Saunders.
They cut in for a thunderstorm in Baghdad, Indiana, and this would have been younger Adam Luckett, late 20s, was about to blow a gasket in his house. Just trying to watch the U.S. Open on a Saturday. We'll get you back to the golf tournament. This is way more important. I'm like, this is a made-up town. There's no one lives there.
That was before they would do the picture-in-picture stuff too, where you would kind of.
It was just every minute he was telling us about how we shouldn't worry about the golf tournament, and everyone was upset about the golf tournament.
Well, I'm a big Jude Redfield fan. He's the morning.
Jude's good.
On
I like
WDRB.
him. Yeah, he does a good job.
He's good. He brings a little bit of sense of humor to him. And in some local TV news, shout out to John Bowl, who's retiring in February. So long time Emmy winner. Fun guy to talk sports with. When I was interning a radio show, he'd come on once a week. Always have a good time with John Bowl. He always chats Derby with us. So I'm sure he's fired up to not do another 72-hour work week for Kentucky Derby
to
week.
go to Derby. Yeah. Just enjoy it at a Derby party or wherever.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you won't find him within hundreds of miles of Louisville, Kentucky Derby week. He's going to be out in the middle of nowhere betting on an app or something and going out of line. So really, really happy for John Bull to reach that retirement finish line up in February.
Speaking of TV people, Peak, you better get ready to box out and get position because all you are going to be down on that field trying to get the best shot of that light show on Saturday. So you need to practice your boxing out. Mark Pope needs to walk on. You get some good practice here.
It's going to be it'll be fun, but I do think I'm not saying the shtick will run thin, but it's a cool thing, but it's like a cool thing that it is what it is.
You have to do it right and do it at the right time. But like the first game, it'll be exciting, and then like big games in the fourth quarter, or I think of Nick when Kentucky was up big on LSU.
Yeah.
In that game, and
Calling
they go
Baton
up.
Rouge.
They throw that touchdown pass to McClain, go up whatever it was, 42-7 or whatever, and then they come back from break, getting ready for the kickoff. If you just play that, that is really gonna. Those are gonna. It's got a chance to enhance the really fun moments. In the stadium.
So the first time you'll see it is when the team comes out to Grove Street. It's all synced up to the music. Make sure you're in your seats. It'll probably be 7:40-ish. So you can watch the end of that Florida-Miami game. We're going to be giving out picks for games like that. I don't know if they're going to be in my selections, but we got news. Montel Johnson, the Florida running back, is going to be available there. So we'll be previewing all of the weekend slates tomorrow at noon. That's going to be live on the KSR YouTube channel, by the way. So make sure you're subscribed right there. You'll get notifications every time we go live. And I've already got a bet in for tomorrow night. I locked it in. I like the number, so I had to jump on it.
Scouting report tomorrow, Thursday. It'll drop every Thursday, game week. So you have a full scouting report. Southern Miss will kind of break down the defensive line and everything else on that roster. And then Luckett's Locks will be back Friday, the column, all at KSR Plus. Join right now, 50% off sale, runs through the end of the week. So if
through the end of the night,
taking the dive with us.
Isn't today the last?
We got a little extension here until Friday.
Okay, good.
So
and UK1 gets you 2 months for $1 too, if you'd rather go that.
There you go. And if you haven't already,
come on,
because these pigskin previews, Nick, they can kind of sneak by people, right? Because everything's happening Thursday, Friday. You're busy, but if you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Do that right now. As soon as you get on YouTube, whether your phone, tablet, computer, dial up, whatever you have, it just comes. You'll just your front page. It'll be there. It'll be right there. So you don't even have to go look for it or search for it or get on Twitter to find it. It'll be right there. So just go ahead and subscribe, and you can get that. And to me, that's perfect. If you're just looking for something to break down games, perfect thing Saturday morning. Adam Luckett or Nick Saban. Adam Luckett every time. Just hit play and let it ride.
Hey, one knows 12 personnel, the other doesn't. So
that's right.
The choice is clear. We appreciate you all hanging out with us on 11 Personnel. Like I said, we'll be back for much more content. Can't wait to see you at Kroger Field this Saturday when the Cats take on Southern Miss at 7:45 on the SEC Network. For Adam Luckett, I'm Nick Roush. Go Cats and go Kroger.